Hello, everyone. Welcome to SUSECON session BP 1104. During this session, we will discuss how to automate high availability SAP deployments on Amazon Web Services while using the HA capability included in SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications. So my name is David Rocha. I'm a Senior Partner Solutions Architect at Amazon Web Services. And Stephen Mogg is co-presenting. He's a solution architect from SUSE, and we work closely together on AWS's and SUSE's initiatives. And we focus on helping SUSE bring their products and services to AWS and SUSE customers. So during today's BP 1104 SUSECON session, Stephen and I will provide an overview of the partnerships for AWS, SUSE, and SAP. Stephen will discuss SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications, its benefits and capabilities, and how to purchase it on the AWS Marketplace. I will cover the AWS Launch Wizard for SAP and describe its customer benefits when it's used to launch SAP applications on AWS. And lastly, I'll walk through a Launch Wizard demonstration.
Okay, thanks, David. So before we get started, I just wanted to share that SUSE and AWS have recently celebrated a great milestone with 10 years of partnership between the two companies. And whilst that's by far the biggest milestone we've had to date, there have been many others along the way. So if we take a look in detail, we can see that there's been a huge amount of activity over the years. In fact, SUSE has helped thousands of customers move to the cloud for both SAP workloads and other workloads as well. And that started back in 2010 when we were the first commercial Linux available on the EC2 Amazon cloud. 5 years later, we have SLES for SAP available in the marketplace to make that easily consumable. And if we take a look at more recent history, we've continued to innovate where we were the first commercial Linux to be able to support some of the larger bare metal instances that were targeted at those very large SAP HANA workloads. But it's not all been about technical innovation. Sometimes it's just about a great partnership. And with SUSE winning the Technology Partner of the Year in late 2020, it was an award we were proud to receive.
So AWS is the cloud leader. We have unmatched experience in providing cloud products and service to our customers. AWS has over 200 services that allow you to innovate and modernize your applications. This includes AWS Launch Wizard for SAP, which is a service we launched in 2020. Since that launch, we've continued to add features based on customer feedback and requests. We also provide the world's most secure, reliable, and extensive cloud infrastructure. We have 80 availability zones in 25 regions, and we have announced plans for more availability zones and more AWS regions and locations that include countries such as India, Indonesia, Japan, Spain, and Switzerland. This is only a fraction of the geographies we're planning on being in. And as far as SAP and AWS innovations, SAP and AWS have been innovating on the cloud since 2008 when SAP signed up as an AWS customer. Early on at AWS, we started by supporting customers running business objects in HANA Developer Edition. SAP continued to innovate with software releases like SAP HANA and SAP BW on HANA. AWS achieved a major milestone in 2016 when we provided support for SAP's HANA-based products. We scaled our infrastructure by introducing X1 instances, which offered sizes up to 2 terabytes in RAM. And over the last 5 years, we have continued to accelerate our rate of innovation. AWS provides you Amazon EC2 high memory instances that are up to 24 terabytes in size. And with the introduction of new instance types or cluster configurations, such as the scale-out cluster for S/4HANA, we work closely with SAP and SUSE to ensure that we're offering our customers industry-leading solutions. And in 2020, we released the AWS Launch Wizard for SAP that helps customers deploy SAP workloads programmatically while following best practices. And Stephen will go ahead and discuss SUSE Linux for SAP applications.
Thanks very much, David. So SUSE launched the product SLES for SAP back in 2011, and as I mentioned earlier, it's available on the marketplace a few years after that. Now, it's essentially a bundle and software and services that we aim specifically at customers running those slightly complicated SAP workloads. And whilst we could probably spend an entire hour talking about all the boxes we see on this screen, it's broadly split up into four themes. The first one revolves around the base OS, which of course involves SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, but we truly appreciate that managing an SAP landscape can be complicated, and staying up to date with the latest operating system service packs isn't always possible. So therefore, as part of SLES for SAP, we bundle in 4.5 years support for each service pack, which gives you plenty of time to plan and align and execute those updates along with your SAP landscape. With regards to ease of use, SUSE has a team that both creates and curates a series of public cloud images on AWS. So this allows you to be up and running in a matter of minutes, or if you want to build your own images, it gives you a very strong foundation on which to build your own set of AMIs for deployment onto AWS. As for performance, you obviously want to get the most out of your investment of the AWS infrastructure that you're purchasing for something like SAP HANA. So we have capability in both SLES for SAP 12 and 15 to ensure that those workloads perform as well as they can. And I guess probably what's most relevant for today's chat is the section on reliability and resilience. Now, a lot of customers choose SLES for SAP because of the business continuity components. And whilst it involves the actual SLE software itself, we actually include the resource agents in order to build out those SAP HANA and NetWeaver clusters on AWS. And alongside that, we have a series of co-authored best practices between SUSE and AWS, which allow you to do that correctly. Now, I mentioned that SLES for SAP is available on the marketplace. Now, one of the easiest ways to consume is via this method. And the reason being is AWS Marketplace, it's a catalog with thousands of listings from ISVs around the world, which make it easier to find and deploy software that runs on AWS. And it's here that you'll find all the latest supported versions of SLES for SAP. So in just a few clicks, you can get yourself up and running. And probably what's important, when you start a workload from the AWS Marketplace, they're actually what we call pay-as-you-go instances. So there's no need to worry about procuring subscriptions because you're good to go as soon as the instance is up and running. Now, one of the reasons that customers choose SLES for SAP is for those business continuity components. Now, if you think about an SAP landscape, there are a number of areas which will benefit from building a cluster around it. And those tend to be the single points of failure that you'll find in such a landscape. Now we can protect these with a cluster, and that will help maximize uptime. So if we take a look on the image on the left, we can see it's our classic architecture for HANA HA. So we have two nodes, each with its own local storage, and we're actually using native SAP HANA system replication in order to push the data from one node to the other. And what we're actually doing with the clustering service is automating the failover process in the case of an application or node failure. Now, it's not all about HANA. On the right-hand side as well, you can see we're protecting an ASCS cluster, again, using the same SUSE clustering technology. And again, we're actually using the SAP native processes in order to replicate the lock table between the two nodes. So all we're doing with the cluster is actually doing the monitoring and managing of the nodes. And as I say, this will maximize uptime in the event of a failure. So let's take a quick look at how to set this up. So building clustered SAP environments can be complicated, and it certainly can be time consuming as well. So if we take a look at the steps we need to go through, so if we take a look at the left-hand side, you can see the basics around building out the infrastructure. So we're talking about building out the networking side of things, the VPCs, subnets, and so on. Then there's the security considerations around the various IAM roles that you may need set up. And then you get down to the various instances that you'll need to build. And then that will need to be executed multiple times depending on the size of your landscape. But once the infrastructure is there, you need to think about what's going on. So in terms of the instances themselves, you'll need to patch them up to a consistent level to ensure you have consistency across the SAP estate. You need to create and mount a number of file systems used by SAP, And once that's complete, if you move across to the right column, you then have to install the SAP software itself, configure the servers, and if there's a cluster involved, then you'll need to configure all the resources needed to ensure that that is working. Now, whilst this type of HA setup can take hours, possibly even days worth of effort, we have some great documentation, as I already mentioned, to help you do that effectively. However, when you do something by hand, it can be error prone, and that might lead to a poor customer experience. So what Dave will do is take you through how to simplify this entire process using the power of automation.
Thanks, Stephen. And in this section, am going to cover the AWS Launch Wizard for SAP and how it helps customers launch SAP applications on AWS. So at AWS, we believe that you should treat your infrastructure and your solutions as code. And looking at the first pillar, infrastructure, means that as a customer, you should understand your infrastructure and treat that infrastructure as code. This includes your servers, network, storage, and operating systems. The next pillar is configuration as code. Once you have your systems deployed, how are you installing and configuring your application and database? Your deployment should not be a manual process. It needs to be automated so that the operating systems and application configuration is consistent across your landscape. And the last pillar, policy as code, means that you need to ensure your system's configuration doesn't drift from your documented and known good configuration. Additionally, you should test and evaluate your environment on a regular basis. This will ensure that the environment is still meeting your business needs. So what does this mean for SAP? We've been investing in bringing deployment automation to our customers and partners since 2014. And this includes the SAP HANA Quick Start, which made it easy for customers to provision, set up AWS resources that are required to run mission critical SAP HANA workloads. Customers loved it, partners loved it. And as we expand the number of instances, storage types, and other AWS features for SAP workloads, customers are telling us that they want a simpler experience, a service that would help them in choosing infrastructure that balances cost and performance for both production and non-production workloads. So in the spring of 2020, AWS Launch Wizard for SAP was introduced as a development tool or a deployment tool for SAP infrastructure. So what are the AWS Launch Wizard key features? So AWS Launch Wizard for SAP provides you a service that you can use to install your SAP HANA and or SAP NetWeaver application stack. It includes all the AWS services needed to run your environment. And the tool allows you to define your instance type based on the amount of RAM and vCPUs, or you can select the number of SAPs you want your instance to provide for your workload. All the instances that are available on the AWS Launch Wizard for SAP are certified for SAP workloads. And you can select security groups that help define networking rules. Additionally, it ensures that you're following the best practices for your SUSE Linux configuration settings. AWS Launch Wizard has an option to automate the installation of your SAP services like SAP HANA, central services, application servers, and web dispatchers. And once you go through the Launch Wizard, all the configurations you selected can be saved and reused for future tests and deployments. Now, since AWS Launch Wizard uses CloudFormation templates, you can also detect drift on an entire stack using the AWS Management Console. And equally as important, the AWS Launch Wizard for SAP allows you to see a cost estimate before you launch that environment. So let's take a look at the SAP system deployment process using AWS Launch Wizard. From the bottom to the top, AWS Launch Wizard will use the AWS provided hardware and services, which include compute, networking, and security. It will allow you to select the operating system and the amount of storage you need, and then install that operating system and configure that storage. And you also have the option to allow AWS Launch Wizard to install SAP NetWeaver and SAP HANA software. And once your deployment is complete, you have the environment that follows AWS and SUSE best practices for SAP deployments. And your application team and basis team can now configure the specific application settings for your environment. So looking at the supported deployment models for HANA, for SAP HANA, the Launch Wizard can install the SAP HANA software as well as the following infrastructure patterns. It supports the single node deployment of SAP HANA, multi-node scale-out cluster, or a high availability cluster deployment that spans across availability zones. Of course, SUSE is a supported and certified operating system for each of these deployments. These deployments are applicable for HANA Sidecar, HANA Data Mart, or native SAP HANA applications. So looking at the NetWeaver on HANA, single node deployments with all application roles and database components are supported. Launch Wizard also supports a distributed instance deployment where you have all application and database components deployed on different EC2 instances running in one availability zone. And when you select cross AZ high availability deployment, you're setting up the high availability pattern for SAP NetWeaver. And Launch Wizard will deploy different Amazon EC2 instances and install the application and database components across availability zones to provide maximum redundancy within a region. So what Launch Wizard provides is a flexibility of using the configurations that you've saved when you deploy additional environments. It will configure your transport file system so that when you launch development environment and you need to add a test environment, you could use the save configuration and launch that test environment. Launch Wizard will configure the transport file system automatically, allowing you to add additional environments to your current landscape. And this can be done in a single VPC with multiple private subnets as shown here, or looking at the next deployment, you can see that it can be done in different VPCs. So if you choose to deploy across multiple VPCs, you'll need to have VPC peering, or a transit gateway set up, because the transport file system has to be mounted across the new deployments that are launched within your current SAP landscape. So let's take a look at the demo. Okay, as I said, here is the demo. So this is a pre-recorded demo, but I will walk through the video. I think I needed to block out my account, so not everybody would see my account credentials or my account number. So let's go ahead and hit play. As you can see that the Launch Wizard is within the AWS Management Console. I can select that, and it will take me to an option, and I'm going to select SAP. From here, you can see the different deployments. I can create a new deployment, and I can see the status of my current deployments. In this case, I have a Dev HANA deployment that I already had created. So this screen is letting you know that a couple of IAM roles are going to be created on your AWS account. It's needed for the AWS Launch Wizard to create the services and resources for SAP. From here, I can give it a deployment name, ERP Dev, and I can also associate tags with this deployment. And what this will allow me to do is, whether it's in the AWS console or the CLI, I can search for resources with that specific tag. I have the option of creating a new deployment or applying a save configuration. create a new configuration or apply a saved configuration. In this case, I'm applying a saved, and that saved configuration name is testing, and it's a non-production environment. Here you can see the VPCs that are available within this region, my private subnet, and the availability zone. So you absolutely can configure this to whatever is available within your region. And there is a checkbox that does verify that you do have a route to the internet through the private subnet, and that is needed so that Launch Wizard can execute the correct APIs to create the services. From here, you can define a proxy server, select what time zone you're in, and define your SAP landscape settings. Remember, this is an existing landscape, so I would just define what my group ID is and select that. And I can also select a simple notification service or an SNS topic, so I can receive alerts based off of this. Here you see that I have the option to deploy an SAP NetWeaver stack or SAP HANA. Now, in this case, we're selecting SAP HANA. And I can then select the storage type that I want. And that S3 bucket, you need to upload the SAP HANA software on an S3 bucket that your account has access to. Don't make it public for everyone to read. Just your account only needs access, and the Launch Wizard will go ahead and connect to that and use that as the installation source. You would define your HANA password, and you didn't want to see me type in the password. So in this video, we're selecting high availability deployment. And what's important to know is that we are going to use SUSE's HA capability, and we are following SUSE's and AWS's best practice for HA scale-up cluster for SAP HANA. And when you're selecting your AMI, you can bring your own image, right? So if you have a specific corporate image, you can select that, or you can select the marketplace image. And as Stephen said, there is marketplace images that have the SUSE subscriptions automatically included. And in this case, we're using 15 SUSE Linux for SAP 15 SP1. Now, the primary instance details and the secondary instance details I typed in. This allows you to really define it. This does not come from the configuration settings. You would go ahead and type that in. And what's important to note is the overlay IP address. This is the IP address that will be used by the SAP HANA cluster. And I can select that. Now, instance sizing, as I said, you can determine the instance type based off of vCPU requirements or memory requirements. In this case, I typed in 1 terabyte of RAM, and you can see that the X116X large instance type was used. You see the monthly charge associated with it and the estimated monthly cost. I can also select based on a specific instance type. So if I know what I want, I could select that. Additionally, I can define SAPs. So in this case, I'm typing 200,000 SAPs. And for that performance requirement, I would need a high memory 6 terabyte metal instance. We change this back. I don't want to deploy a metal instance for a demo environment. And there you can see 64. The instance type changed to an R5 2X large. And once again, it's prompting me, letting me know that I need the correct IAM role, and an IAM role is going to be selected. Once I hit next, you can see the configuration settings, and you have the ability to edit it. So in reviewing it, if there was something you wanted to change or you notice a mistake, you can go ahead and edit that. And the next step is deploy. Once you deploy the environment, it is going through a cloud formation deployment. So you can go into the AWS console and view the status of that cloud formation template or that deployment for your SAP landscape. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. So if we move to the next slide, we will see the SAP software deployment models. And during that demo, we saw the scale-up cluster for SAP HANA was selected. And just remember, the AWS Launch Wizard allows you to automatically deploy and install NetWeaver on HANA, S4HANA, and BW HANA applications with the choice of the following patterns. You have the ability of the single node, multi-node, or high availability options. Now let's look at the AWS Launch Wizard benefits. It reduced time to deploy as well as programmatically launching consistent deployments. The guided deployment provided you a walkthrough on the settings that you needed to launch successfully. And additionally, the Amazon EC2 instances that were available in the Launch Wizard were SAP certified instances, and you can actually select the instances based off of SAP's requirements or memory and vCPUs. And the selections that you make are saved in a configuration that you can review and edit as you go forward. Additionally, when you select SUSE operating system, AWS Launch Wizard will deploy the environment based on SUSE and AWS best practices for SAP deployments. Now, if you want to learn more about AWS Launch Wizard, please visit the following URL that's on the slide and check out the AWS Launch Wizard service in your AWS console. Now, I want to thank Stephen for joining me and for our presentation for the SUSECON session Best Practice 1104.